Aloha and welcome back to another episode of the Ohana Packers Edition podcast, the podcast where two dudes plus Robin Adams have joined today to recap everything green and gold. I'm Mike, that's Iowa Joe, and we have Robin, and Robin is trying to get his son Ricky to go to sleep, so we're going to keep ourselves a little bit contained over the results of today's game. But Robin, thank you so much for joining us today.
Ricky witnessed it. It's all good.
Well, I just got to remember to keep my language down a little bit because I get a little animated on
especially after the Monday night game this week and today's game. We're gonna go what I call full on Joe Pesci from Home Alone mode. So, yep. Today, I know that Robin and Ricky would probably be in a much more jovial, maybe even both fully awake now if the Packers had played a little better, in particular on one side of the ball. But Robin, we just want to welcome you to the show and thank you for fitting us into your schedule. I know it's been a day of driving and not so great football, but thank you so much for joining us on Ohana Packers Edition tonight.
Oh, it's a lot of fun to be here. Big fan of what you guys do. And, win or lose, it was, Jordan Love played a good game and Joe Barry coached a shitty game. So what more could you ask for at this point as a Packers fan?
It's what we've been dealing with all year, it seems like, and even into last year for the most part. But yeah, I mean, we'll get into the breakdown here in a minute, but yeah, I that's about the best way to describe all of it. Is Jordan and the offense seemed to roll pretty well, and then the defense just couldn't hack it. And I this was one of the big concerns. I said this a little bit on our preview game that I had this feeling that Baker was going to come in and have a revenge style game because it was 2 years in a row that he came in throwing 8 total interceptions, and today he came in perfect.
Yep. No, Joe hit it right on the head.
Wasn't that last game that he played with the Rams like his third day in the offense? Yeah. So
yeah. I think they were doing the whole like the stories of Howard Green learning Dom Capers' defense in the hotel lobby or whatever like that. I think that was basically it. They were whiteboarding him in the meeting room and stuff like that. But yeah, so. Just leave it to Barry to make any quarterback look like an all-pro. I think we all saw the tweet where it was the first time that a visiting quarterback has ever had a perfect rating inside the walls of Lambeau. So just another stellar performance by Joe Barry and his defense. But like you both kind of alluded to, let's talk about the parts that we should be relatively pleased with today, and that's Jordan Love in this offense, who came into the game, figuring they would be undermanned or have guys who were operating at less than 100%. And, I thought Love was inconsistent, especially to start the game. But as we've wanted to see him do all season, I thought he did bounce back and play better as the game went on. But, Robin, how did you and Ricky feel about Love's day being there at the game today in particular?
I mean, it was really nice to see just the way he made adjustments throughout the game. Like you saw early on him hitting like Jaden Reed for a few passes, and you saw Tucker Kraft get a few looks. And then in the fourth quarter, Dontavian Wicks was getting more separation, so he switched over to hitting Wicks downfield. So that's something that the Packers have not had at quarterback, thanks Aaron, is someone who is willing to take the matchups that are given to them and use it. And so I thought that he spread the ball out really well. I don't like the checkdowns as much, especially the ones to Taylor that went for negative yardage. But then again, what can you do, I suppose, if everyone's covered downfield? But like the rookie wide receivers have really, I don't remember the last time we've had a pair of rookie wide receivers that are as good as Wicks and Reed are, like, right away. I mean, Reed finished with 6 catches today, which means he needs one more to tie Sterling Sharp's record for rookie receptions in a season. Musgrave was on pace to break that record too before he got hurt. But, Musgrave getting hurt, look at Tucker Kraft coming in. I feel like the Packers have a really good 1-2 punch at tight end for the future.
No, yeah, you got to be really happy with how they've all looked. Just
and you
question.
might even throw in like Ben Sims in there too, because even in his limited role, he's looked pretty good for such an undrafted who was cut loose from Minnesota early on in the preseason and then stepping into the Packers fairly new. So, and I know he got open on that pass. It just Jordan had stuff in his face that he couldn't get a good throw on it. Otherwise, we'd be talking about the kind of game he had today too.
Absolutely. Robin, one thing we wanted to ask, how was the weather conditions at the game today? We can only kind of see it was overcast and looked like it was raining at a certain point. Was it particularly windy today down on the field though?
Yeah, it was windy, but it wasn't that bad.
Oh, okay.
I mean,
okay,
my 6-year-old wasn't phased by it, so I can't see the players being phased by it. But but it's football weather, and obviously the Buccaneers had no problem with it. So I don't really see, and they're from Florida, so I don't really see how using any wind or weather can be used as an excuse for the Packers not playing well because a Florida team did well in it.
Yeah.
Well, I think Baker was quoted as saying that this was the warmest he's ever had at Lambeau. So, it couldn't have been that horrid. But I know, what was it? They said that at the start of the game, there was a little bit of rain that was falling, but it didn't really amount to anything.
Yeah. I mean, there was a little precipitation, but nothing that I would consider terrible.
Good deals. But yeah, like I said, it was overall it comes out to a solid day at the office for Love. But when you really take a fine comb to it, you kind of parse out his first couple drives and you compare the rest of the game. I thought he had a very, overall effective game day and stuff. And I thought the guys around him played pretty good. You had that one moment coming out of halftime where Reed and Wicks looked like they, again, were, as everyone kind of has joked the last couple of weeks, that we had some October football between the two of them. But other than that, I think, like I said, guys stepped up. We had no Watson. You had no Reed at certain points of this game, still no Musgrave. So I was really pleased with how, Wicks continues to step up in any opportunity he's given.
And I've got to say this about Wicks. He must have been doing the same routine that Aaron Rodgers was, because we were all worried that he was going to be done with, because he kept saying that he had a high ankle sprain. Well, as we know from most of the early part of the season, if you had a high ankle sprain, you were done for a bit. And then he comes out and has almost 100-yard game, and he's cutting and juking and running routes like an all-pro, and it makes you wonder how much cortisone or stuff that they pumped into his friggin' ankle to make it so he couldn't feel it anymore.
What are you talking about, Joe? They don't do that anymore. But no, he was moving around really well out there. I was pleasantly surprised that he wasn't just a decoy or anything like that. He was very much in the heart of the game plan for today. So, and they needed it. They needed every bit of it from Wicks today.
So I got one important question for Ricky. How much junk food did your dad let you eat today?
Oh, he ate all the chicken tenders today. Chicken tenders and a pretzel.
There you go.
That's the good stuff. But yeah, otherwise, did anything else stick out for you today, Robin? I have in my notes, I thought, the offense, I thought no one really stuck out as having a horrible game. I thought the O-line was fine. And I thought Jones was good, but, people are going to do their usual, where was he? But I was like, it's his first game back in 2 months. You can't just, as much as everyone's he's fresh.
Weird. Well, that was weird because they pounded him down the throat the first part of the game, and then he was done. You'd think if you were going to, put
So
him in like a
typical
rotation.
Matt LaFleur use of Jones.
Right.
That was
And then he just, so if you're going to like limit him, spread it out through the game. But, like Robin just said, typical LaFleur use and McCarthy use of Jones. I feel so sorry for Aaron Jones because he's got the ability. I know he's had some injury issues, but he's had 2 straight coaches that misuse him. It's sad.
Yeah.
I
And
think that the offense was actually really missing AJ Dillon today because it was cold and it was wet. And that's AJ Dillon weather. And the one thing we saw from the Packers offense is the lack of long drives. And that's something that AJ Dillon has provided in the last few weeks. It has been being able to make drives longer by picking up tough yards.
yeah, I think
I
that
hate
did
agreeing
factor
with you,
into.
but that's the truth.
I think that factored heavily into LaFleur's decision to challenge that, that weird spot on that one Jones run, because he's probably thinking like, well, we didn't pick up 4th and 1 or 4th and 2. They were bad spotting the ball all day too. It felt like everything was a little bit wonky today from broadcast view, but yeah, it was just one of those kind of games. But thought Love did more than enough to pull his weight. Obviously, you'd like him to be a little more efficient in the red zone, but nothing that really stood out as a head scratcher or just throw your hands and hat in the air kind of game like that. Robin, for you and Ricky, did anyone else stand out? Too many standouts, but did anyone jump out to you guys off the playing field as guys that deserve to be recognized for their efforts today on offense?
I mean, Kraft, Love, the rookie wide receivers, Jones in the first quarter. That's about it. I mean, the offense probably should have put up more than 20 points, but for as young as they are, I thought that was a really nice performance. And like I said, we got a good game out of Jordan Love, which is what we wanted. Like if we're gonna lose games at all anymore this year, it needs to be because of something other than the offense. And this was not on the offense.
Absolutely.
The only thing, and I kind of mentioned this on Twitter and responded to my former co-host Nick Gregory. The only decision that I kind of questioned was that 4th and 2 down at the inside the red zone, and it wasn't so much the decision to go for it, but you're already down 3. Do you risk, it was kind of like a double-edged sword, 50-50 shot. Do you risk it by going for it and get the touchdown, or do you risk it with your kicker who, although has been pretty solid, never know, could shank it whenever. So that was the only real decision there at the beginning that I questioned was why not just go ahead for the 3? But
kind of worked out for him though.
Right. Yeah, no doubt.
No.
But, and like Nick said, well, Reed was open and Jordan just missed him. Well, that's what I mean by the 50-50 shot. Or if you went the other way, you never know. There could have been a block, there could have been a shank, there could have been a misplay, whatever. So that was the only real thing that you could point at in the first quarter anyway, saying, hey, maybe we should have done something different. But I have to say, even the offensive line looked like it was holding up for the most part. I was looking through stats, and it says they gave up 2 sacks, but it looked like for the most part he really had clean pockets, except towards maybe the end of the game
when their hand is tipped at that point. So yeah, it's not really, it's kind of out of the O-line's hand. They just have to sort of hold down whatever they can at that point. So yeah, I agree. It was you had the usual, Myers had his one play and Runyon had his one play kind of thing. But overall, I thought it was a mostly good game from the 5 up front. I thought they had a pretty solid night or afternoon.
The thing that sucks about the Myers play, and I know I've been riding his ass or butt, sorry, Ricky, all year. But it
Ricky's
was so...
heard it all.
Okay.
It's fine.
So the only thing was that we had just got from the commentators the series before for the Buccaneers where their offensive lineman got called for holding. Oh yeah, every time you hook that arm around him, it's going to be called holding. And then we go right to the next drive with the Packers. And guess what Josh the Goat Myers does? He hooks his guy, and you knew it was going to be flagged.
I heard Wayne Larrabee say, because Ricky had me doing laps around Lambeau today. So I was watching a lot of it on the screens and listening to Wayne Larrabee. Wayne Larrabee said that was only the second holding call Myers has had all year. And to be honest, I was shooketh by that, because Myers has not been my favorite, but wow. Good on him.
think it kind of goes in line with him, because he is much better in pass pro than as a run blocker. And I know this will kind of sound backhanded, but he's either going to get the job done, or you get one of those plays where it's like, Myers, can you try and stuff? So he's not necessarily getting caught for holding because he's sliding the other way and the guy cuts off his hip or something like that. So,
or he's already been beat, period.
Yeah. So it's one of those. But I do think it's that kind of thing where if Myers was Elton or if he was Zach Tom, it's like, oh, that's just a tough rep for the either of those guys. But because Myers is the whipping boy, it's like, we both said that either one of the guys I named should probably be the center. It's like any little thing he does wrong is getting put under the microscope, under another microscope. So, but yeah, I'm. It's one of those where you kind of think about it and you're like, 2 holding calls. That's low. Like, that's pretty good for any O lineman. And
I'm glad Robin clarified that, because I swore the guys on the CBS commentary said that was the only 2 hold calls he's had in his career. And I'm thinking, no, that can't be.
That can't be right.
No, that can't be right at all.
No.
So if Robin said, wait, that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
Because I'm just sitting there like, wait a minute. No. I have watched this guy for the last 4 years. There is no chance that this was the only 2 times he's ever been called.
But like all 3 of us have kind of said, I thought, it could have been a more efficient day at the office, but the offense moved the ball on this Bucks defense that, it's not as good as it was when they won the Super Bowl a few years ago, but it's still they still have a lot of playmakers on that side of the ball. And you didn't hear like Antoine Winfield Jr.'s name called too much today. I think Shaq Barrett only really had that one hit on Love after he kind of threw the ball away after he broke the pocket. Vita, and I know this is going to sound weird, but I thought Vita Vea, I know he's playing hurt, but I thought he was just kind of more there than really like making big impacts today. And I get that he's playing with an injury, but also he's been a guy that's just completely shelled this offense when he's been healthy. So I thought overall it was a good day on the offense. And putting a bow on that, like we said, that was not the unit that lost us the game today. Today was the full effect of Robin. I don't know how many.
Before we get to that, can we also shout out Anders Carlson?
Oh yeah, we're gonna get to special teams later.
Because if we're talking about who did not lose us the game, yes. Anders Carlson, 2 for 2 field goal. He made his extra points, and I would like to point out that now it's well over 80% field goal percentage is better than Mason Crosby's career field goal percentage.
Yeah, I kind of got onto a guy on Reddit the other day because he goes, well, the whole post of his thread was, does anybody else hate Anders as much as I do? And, I just busted. I was like, I know this is probably just a troll post, but then I went step by step through it. He's only missed, or he's at 80%. He's still a rookie. Kind of like we've talked about before, Mike, with the expectations going into the season for him, he's over the moon compared to that. And, not everything has been his fault. Josiah DeGuara not blocking on a field goal. Ozerlik messing up a couple of snaps. Whelan's been pretty good so far with the hold, so I can't really complain about that. There we got full view. Did Ricky go to sleep?
Thanks, guys, for putting him to sleep.
We do what we can.
Well, I'm good at something, I guess.
But no,
But,
yeah.
yeah. So Anders is definitely not a reason for the loss today. And, like Mike and I were answering a guy on Twitter, we don't know why he's kicking it short. I'm starting to fully believe it's something to do with what Bisaccia is telling him. Hey, kick it short. We'll take our chances with, if they decide to return it, but they're going to get a free 25 one way or the other.
Yeah, and you kind of did see that today where Tampa called fair catch 2 or 3 times today where they're catching the ball inside the 5-yard line on kickoff. So I do think that I really do think it's part of the quote unquote the strategy with the new fair catch rules. Try and get someone, I think Bisaccia's like, well, I have Keyshawn Nixon who's got an itchy trigger finger, so maybe some other teams do too, kind of thing and stuff. So, but we'll dive into that in a little further detail when we get to special teams. But yeah, neither of those 2/3 of the team were the reason that they lost this game. It's all on Joe Barry's defense. And I don't have Uglam's tweet, but he had something like in the last 32 quarters, the Packers have forced like 3 punts. And I tweeted after the game that I was like, I'm glad that an opponent finally broke 30 points again so that we don't get those dumb, whoa, he's keeping them under 20 for the whatever games out of whatever games streak. And I was like, it's the biggest crock of a lie of a stat for this team.
Did you guys see that the Saints sacked Tommy DeVito 6 times today?
Yeah.
Oh, really? No, I didn't pay attention.
No, we were talking about that last week, and it's like, there's just a severe lack, because we saw it today. The pass rushers were so much more disciplined than what they were on Monday night last week. And it's like watching that Monday night game in New York, it's like, what did Joe say? Like, this O-line sucks and you guys are all like, just get past your man and you're gonna get a sack kind of thing, because that's how they all played. And today you had guys who were in their lanes. Kenny played one of his best games in most productive, I should say. I think Kenny's had a pretty solid stretch of games like for the last couple months of this season, but he had what was maybe his most productive game in a few years. And Sean was getting there.
Career high in sacks now.
Yeah. So,
well, and I was just going to say one of the sacks that he got credited for, I think I would have gave at least partial to TJ Slayton, because Slayton hit Baker.
Yeah, it's one of those that he might lose. So instead of having a career high, he might be tying his career high in sacks when the league looks at it again, kind of thing and stuff. But yeah, it was a really good day at the office for Kenny. I thought
I thought Van Ness played himself a good game.
He really popped on film today. Outside of his sack, he had several good plays at the line of scrimmage today.
I'll let you guys talk about him a little bit more, so they just don't think it's my bias towards him.
No, it was a good day in the office for the defensive front, but unfortunately, because of Barry, they can't be just good. They have to be. Someone has to be playing out of their dome for this defense to look passable. And as good as some of those guys, as overall that unit was, it just wasn't enough to overcome Chris Godwin. Great, very good to great player. He's had a solid season coming back from a torn ACL and MCL last year. Dude still hasn't been covered. 10 catches for 155 yards. Ooh, no touchdown. Great. I guess that's someone else got it instead. But I mean, there was just a lack of any sort of creativity. I know the Barry defenders are going to say, but look who he's got to play back there. Robin, was it as bad in person as it was for the two of us watching on TV?
Here's the thing. Here's the problem I have with the Barry defenders, and look who he's got to play with. He's got really good players to play with.
Yeah.
Like, Carrington Valentine is a stud. He's a 7th round pick, but he's a stud. Rudy Ford is having a pretty good season. I saw someone call him a stopgap today on Twitter. He might He might not be a stopgap. Like he started the season as a stopgap. I think he'll start somewhere. Maybe not Green Bay, but I think he'll start somewhere.
Yeah, I think he's more of a stopgap for Green Bay because I just, as much as this might be wishful thinking, I do think Barry is probably done at the end of the year. And who knows if the guy that they bring in will want a Rudy Ford on the team, or if they just keep Rudy Ford depending on what Bisaccia does and all that stuff.
Are we convinced Bisaccia is going to be back next year?
I think so. I really do. I don't think LaFleur is going to completely clean house, and unless Rich gets like a head coaching position, I don't see him.
Well, that's true. No one's going to pay him as much as we pay him. So
right. So if they if they don't fire Barry,
but Barry's theoretically Barry's contract is up at the end of the year because that's what they do with their assistants is 3-year contracts. So
and the one that's going to hurt me is I really think Jerry Montgomery's done. And I hate saying that because, well, yeah, but he's a Hawkeye, and I can't say bad things about my Hawkeyes. So
that's fine.
So we will. Nah, I'm kidding.
Yeah. Or you can listen to my show with Gilbert Brown and listen to Gilbert Brown say awful things about Jerry Montgomery.
Well, I'll let you guys do it. I have a hard time trashing my Hawkeye guys. So
I defended Mike Trgovac until maybe he was a little bit over the hill and over the next hill at the point that he got let go from the Packers. So I understand what you're saying about Jerry. There's a special spot for all of our former players, but
I also thought early on before the whole mess of the last few games we've had that somehow they were going to end up keeping Barry, but they were going to use some of the positional guys as sacrificial lambs. And, that means like a Montgomery getting let loose, maybe like, maybe the inside linebacker guy. I don't know. I'd have to look through the staff just to see, but I figured but now after the last 2 weeks, I don't see any way possible to justify keeping Barry at the end of the year. And it even sounded like maybe Matt LaFleur's not really sure
that's
he's
the
going to
first
keep
time we've heard him even like
he almost let it slip.
Yeah.
Almost.
But I will
Katie Sunderman posted posted that in one of our Twitter groups. She was like, She goes, did you guys hear him say that? And I think we all went back and listened to it again. And we're like, oh, that's like you said, that's the first crack that we've really had in the company line there.
But I will say, and I will probably break a lot of Packer fans' hearts with this, I don't see it happening in the middle, until after the season is completely
over. No, you're right. I mean, it should, but it won't.
It should. He should have been walking 2 weeks
ago. I liken it to my Milwaukee Brewers back in 2008, where they're almost there. They're almost to the postseason, but the obvious answer is the manager. So they fired him with 12 games left, and they made the postseason. And this is like the Packers. Like, who posted it? If the Packers win out, they have a 93% chance of making the playoffs. Because the Falcons winning really messed up the standings.
Yeah.
And so, 3 games left, winnable games. And really the only thing you can say is holding us back is the defensive coordinator. And they're not going to fire him.
Because I don't know who you would have replace him. Maybe Greg Williams. But there's no way you're going to give it to, like I said, Jerry Montgomery. There's no way think you can give it to the outside linebacker coach. And you're not going to get somebody come in just to coach for 3 games.
Well, and the problem is the scheme, right? I mean, the play calling is one thing, but it's the scheme that is also the issue. And you're not going to get in a whole new guy to implement a whole new scheme in 7 days and have that fix the problem. I mean,
right.
It would be. This isn't Madden.
Yeah,
but it would be nice.
Yeah,
but
like I said, you're not shit canning Barry at any point in season for this, like, the current season. You're doing it so that he's definitely not back the following season. Like, that's the only reason, at least from my point of view. That's why I've been like, just do it, because then we'll be sure that we're free of, it's the I need to be free of this pain, as Kylo Ren would say. But yeah, I agree. If it happens, it's not going to happen till after the season. But like I said in one of our threads, our Twitter feeds, Robin, if LaFleur gets up there and starts to utter the words that sound like Joe Barry will be, I was like, someone needs to just hip check him off the mic stand. Whether it's, I don't care if it's Goot or Murphy, but one of them needs to step in and be like, like Monty Python style, and like pull the curtain down and start playing the loopy music, and
we're gonna get that hook out there.
Yeah.
I got two things on that. The one is that, Mike McCarthy held on to Pettine too long, and that cost him his own job.
Yeah.
If Matt LaFleur somehow convinces the powers that be to not move on from Joe Barry, that will cost Matt LaFleur his own job.
Yeah, and I've said that a lot during this season, that eventually LaFleur is going to have to look at it as saving his own ass. And there's no way to justify the same defense we've been rolling out the last 2 years where, yeah, for most part, they may have only given up like 20 points a game or whatever, but we're still losing. It comes down to those 20 points are important when your offense is only scoring 20 points and your defense is supposed to be the veteran group of your team.
Yep. And then the second thing I had on it was a few weeks ago. We were talking to Gilbert on our show about coaching and getting rid of Jerry Montgomery because we are not happy with the defensive line, because there has been no improvement.
There hasn't.
From the defensive line in years. I mean, Kenny Clark is a very good player, but he has not really improved much over the last 3 years. And so I asked Gilbert if he would take the defensive line coaching job as like right now. And he said no, because he refuses to work for Joe Barry.
Yeah.
He said that he would get himself fired for slapping somebody before he even got to coach a game.
That's funny. Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with him. I mean, I probably wouldn't slap one of them because they're bigger than some of those guys are, monsters, and I may be a big guy, but I'm not taking a slap back from them.
He was going to slap Joe Barry.
Yeah. So, but anyway, I just, like you said, Robin, though, the scheme is also what hurts, because it's this typical Shanahan coaching tree scheme. And we're starting to see where it's not working out for a lot of these teams. The big one to look at right now is the Chargers. Staley was supposed to be the golden child when it came to this scheme, and he's not on the team. He's not coaching a team anymore. The closest you can get is maybe what DeMeco Ryans is doing down with Houston. But how much of that is a Shanahan tree scheme or his own style? So, and Salah's not doing much out with the Jets. So it's going to be interesting. And I don't know, I've been considering maybe writing something up for this week about potential defensive coordinators that could be brought in that wouldn't cause too much of a havoc to change the personnel that we already have.
Yeah.
But see, like, that's the thing, though. That's the thing, too, is I think that our players for the most part, are pretty good.
Yeah.
Like,
especially in the front seven. I think they
yes,
have
especially
impact
the
players
front
all across
seven.
the front seven.
I mean, you look at the corners and the safeties, and you see some definite need there. Injuries haven't helped, but
No.
like if you know, in a perfect world, if Jonathan Owens is your fourth or fifth safety,
Yeah.
he's pretty good fourth or fifth safety. If Rudy Ford is your second or third safety, I think you can live with that. But like Corey Ballantyne as a starting corner,
Right.
like he's a special teamer. You know, like
He definitely outplayed his kick coverage the last, for that streak. So, appreciate what he did stepping in, but I just, like you said, I don't see it, possible to keep justify him as a starter going forward.
Yeah.
And I think that's why you're seeing a lot of these waiver claims at the moment, like David Long, and they tried Caillou Blue, and what's
Robert
the other
Rochelle
one
is
that they?
still on the roster.
Yeah, Rochelle. And
they all make
there was,
sense though, because it's the if you look at all of their athletic profiles, Rochelle is the only guy that's like a big guy, like a tall guy, but the rest of them,
Yeah.
you kind of look at them and you're like, they're all, Valentine, Long, Carrington Valentine, Corey Ballantyne, David Long, and they're all Jair. The four guys, they're all sort of the similar athlete and stuff. And I do prefer that you go with that archetype where it's like, let's see if we can get these raw athletes and teach them how to football. And you're seeing the benefits of that with Valentine this season. Like you both said, Valentine has played his butt off, and maybe he is like a dime corner or something like that, but it's not tenable at this point for him to be your number one or number two cornerback kind of thing. But I do
what
like
else
going
they
to
have
the well.
in common?
Yeah.
You know
What's
what
that?
else they have in common? They're more of a man press guy than a zone coverage guy.
Yep.
And it's kind of hard to bring those guys in when you've got a coach who just want to continue to play a soft zone coverage. When, look at Eric Stokes. I feel so bad for Eric Stokes right now because he had a great rookie season. He came in, he kind of was not good last year before getting hurt. Came in today after missing all this time, and he didn't look good. Why didn't he look good? He was playing a zone coverage, and he was expecting safety help over the top when you're playing one high safety.
Yeah, no, that touchdown that he quote unquote gave up, that's just added to the laundry list of why I just despise the things Barry does. Like, everyone, a lot of the defenders want to say like, well, he's trying different things and he's doing this and he's swapping his coverage. That play, if you look at the pre-snap, it's cover three or cover one the whole way. There's no disguise to it. And then I think right before, right when everyone gets set, you see both the perimeter corners take 2 steps back. And anyone who's played football is like, well, that's cover three. And then Stokes has no chance on that play. And it's not necessarily Ford's fault either, because he does have to honor the route that's coming into from his left. So he can't just, because if he doesn't hold with Godwin, I think is the guy running the corner on the opposite side, then that's an easy touchdown and stuff. So but it's the root of it is that you're playing such a blatantly obvious coverage. You do nothing pre-snap, you don't try to make it look like cover 2 or cover 4. And then, like Joe and I have said, it's like, what has to happen? Rashawn has to just run through someone off the snap. Kenny has to jump over the line of scrimmage. Someone has to make a Herculean effort just to bail this defense out of being behind the 8 ball all the time. And when they don't, you get just, Baker couldn't have handed that ball to Mike Evans any easier than he threw it to him. So, yeah, that's just par for the course. You guys like Ross Uglum, they just beat that drum all the time. And everyone's like, oh, like, why do you have to? It's like, because it's there. Like, this is the most elemental and basic stuff. And all that play made me laugh at was thinking of Mike Leach. They had his, like, his beliefs, and he has on there, I think it's his second point is everything beats cover 3. And I'm like, especially when you do nothing to disguise it, everything works on cover 3. So,
well, and before you say anything, Robin, I'll let you have your thought. But just to bounce off Mike's, it's even sad when the guys in the booth are saying, "Well, that's what that's at." Baker sees exactly what's going on, and that they said that multiple times throughout the game for those defenses. Oh, well, yeah, that's cover 3. Oh, yeah, that Baker sees it right away and knew exactly where he was going to go the minute he saw the defense. They're not hiding anything.
Yeah, I was gonna say that Joe Barry doesn't do anything to hide what he's doing, and it feels like the only person he's fooling or has fooled is Matt LaFleur, who doesn't seem to be fooled anymore, and it's really funny. But I want to go back to my point about like the players that they have like on defense. If you look at what their starters should be, there might be one or two bad players. Darnell Savage, who used to be a good player.
Yeah.
Who knows? And like the point I wanted to make is like, we talk about, Joe Barry could affect Matt LaFleur's job, but if the last I would say 2 drafts have shown anything, it's that Brian Gutekunst has a real eye for talent.
Yeah.
And we have 8 first-round picks on this defense. And how do you have 8 first-round picks and have a below-average defense? That is either coaching malpractice or Goody sucks at his job.
And to that point that you're making, Robin, of those 8, the only 2 that you can point at and say, are they bad are Stokes and Savage. And there's it's not as cut and dry as, well, that guy just, neither is Ahmad Carroll, that kind of thing.
That's true. And for Savage, I think it's his 5th year. We have our answer.
Yeah.
But with Stokes, he had a really good rookie year. He hit a sophomore slump and then he got hurt.
Yeah.
So you can't even say you don't have an answer on Stokes one way or another. Now the question around Stokes is, will he ever stay healthy?
Yeah,
that's the big question right there.
Yeah,
and
I
have
still 6 out of 8 is a 75% hit ratio, and I think that's pretty good for any NFL GM.
Yeah, and on top of that, I don't think those 6 guys, I don't think one of them is starting quote unquote because he's a first round pick. I do actually think they're all, they might not all be all pro level players, but I do think, the rest of those guys are all good football players in their own right. And
everybody knows that the Packers don't start rookies unless they absolutely have to.
Right.
Otherwise we wouldn't be seeing Preston Smith and Rashawn Gary starting. It would be Rashawn Gary and Lucas Van Ness starting on the edges, and then rotating Preston and Igbare in. But it's not. You have your main guys out there, and then you rotate the younger guys in. That's kind of what I think they were hoping for in the Stokes situation. But because of injuries and everything else, because that's even when they had to bring in Rasul Douglas and guys like that. But I would even argue, and I know a lot of people are going to blast me for this, but I would argue that I don't think necessarily Goody has made horrible picks in any of his drafts. They just haven't, whether it be coaching, whether it fits the scheme or not. Because, I mean, you can even look at the 2020 draft. I don't think the 2020 draft is great for any one team, because that was the year, that's basically going to be the forgotten year.
Unless Jordan Love is the guy, which he certainly looks like it. And that's all he needed to hit on. If Jordan Love is the next great Packers quarterback, which he certainly looks like he's going to be, I mean, he's on pace for 4,000 yards and 30 touchdowns.
And he's already got more touchdowns right now than what Rodgers had in his first starting year.
Right.
So, otherwise, the rest of the drafts, even though they may not be on the team right now, look at some of the ones that are out playing elsewhere.
Oren Burks
Yeah,
is like one of the best linebackers in the NFL right now, and Joe Barry wasted him
yeah.
in Green Bay.
What's the other one that
The guy,
Adams with Pittsburgh? Montravius Adams
Yep,
has been looking
yep.
good in Pittsburgh.
He's having a really good game, really good one. And then who is the linebacker that they let go to Houston?
Kirksey?
No.
Or are you talking? Oh, draft pick wise?
Yeah.
Um,
Kadar Holman?
Oh,
that was
the
a
corner.
cornerback.
Yeah,
that was a corner.
Oh, yeah.
He was a corner.
No,
out
that's
of
not who I'm
Toledo.
thinking of. I don't remember.
Mike, you're my draft guy. Come on, who was it?
The two guys that are screaming to my head are Holman and Christian Kirksey. But I think, you know, you look back on it and it's always easier to have hindsight 2020 on all the drafts. The only one that I really had questions about was 21, because like 2018, Goot's first draft, we all thought that those first two picks were absolute steals in getting Jair and, you know, trading back and still getting Jair and then getting Josh Jackson in the second round. Like, I think everyone was like, oh my God.
And I know
like,
this is going to be bias, but if Josh Jackson was drafted this year playing in this Barry system,
oh yeah,
I think would have been a lot better than when he was drafted in the system we were running at that time.
Yeah. So
because Iowa plays a heavy zone defense, and that would have been perfect for this defense.
Yeah. So I don't put too much into the whole like, oh my God, like he blew it, he sucks at his job in terms of Gutekunst. It takes time, and you have to account for what the
I gotta look this up because now it's gonna bug the
coach the coaches he was drafting for and all that, the fit he was looking for. And I try not to play the woulda, coulda, shoulda game in the draft. The only one I do is Terry McLaurin, because I was just like, I never really liked Jay Sternberg as a draft prospect, and Terry was the very next pick kind of thing and stuff. But that's getting into a topic I know that we can discuss.
We'll get that in the off season.
Yeah, but like, Robin, I don't know how many of the episodes you listened to before, but Joe and I, we kind of have laughed through the defense the last 2 months, because we're like, we could spend or waste 30 to 45 minutes of our lives talking about the defense, but you can listen to any of the previous episodes, and the only things that's going to change is who we're giving credit for actually playing out of their domes in the specific game. Otherwise, it's like, did any of them really get given a chance to make something happen? Or and I'm sure, I know Gilbert has talked about it a lot on your guys' show, but I just hate the mentality that this defense plays with. The whole, well, we're not going to get beat over the top. And from Gilbert's point of view, you know, he played for Fritz Shermer. I know that it's against everything in his DNA to see a defense that's wearing green and gold have that mentality. That's like, it's okay that stuff happens in front of us because we're going to rally to the ball. Like, it's okay that it happens. We'll get them later. Like, I know that eats at Gilbert, but that mentality, that conservative mentality, is what eats away at me with this Barry defense overall.
I think that one of the things that the Packers upstairs did that really is a detriment to the team now is that they don't let the alumni come in to the locker room anymore. I mean, they can, but they have to go through a ton of red tape. But Gilbert tells stories about how when he was a player, he'd be at his locker and Ray fucking Nitschke would come in and sit down and just talk ball with him. And he said he learned so much about defense and being a Packer from him. And he goes, I would love to just go in there and sit down next to Quay Walker or TJ Slaton and like just talk shop with them. And I think that it would help, but they don't let them do that anymore. And I think like that's a problem because, I mean, Gilbert played on a defense that held Barry Sanders to -1 yards in a game.
Yeah.
Like, there's no person on this defensive coaching staff that's in their ear that is mean. And they need someone who's mean.
Well, Mike
I don't mean
Daniels has
like
been
I
saying the
don't
whole thing on
yeah.
Twitter.
Yes, he has. And I don't mean like be like a jerk of a person, but like even like when they won, it was Kevin Green.
Yeah.
You know, like they have that coach who is like, you know, a teddy bear off the field, but an asshole on the field. And they need an asshole on their coaching staff.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, that's the other side of it too. Like, scheme and all be damned, and that's where, like, that's why I would want a Robert Saleh, is because, like, maybe his offense sucks, but look at his Jets defense. That Jets defense just rips teams apart and stuff, and that's all I want. Like, you can get beat. You're gonna get beat playing defense in this league. There's too many rules stacked against offenses to play the kind of lockdown defense that, like, the Steel Curtain played in the 70s, or even like Lombardi's Packers would be able to play in the 60s. You just can't play. They've legislated a lot of that stuff out of the game at this point. So it's like,
but you don't want to have a defense where it's 4th and 2 and the offense is like easy.
Yeah.
And that's the problem with Joe Barry.
You have to still find out how to be the hammer in situations where you need to be a hammer.
Well, and the way it sounds like from Mike Daniels, it might be an organizational type thing too.
Well, that's what I'm saying, is they barred the veterans, the alumni from coming in.
Yeah.
Or they made it more difficult for them.
So I wonder if I hate saying it because, you know, I know Mark Murphy's a really great guy and all that stuff, but maybe it would be better for him to retire now, because maybe we get somebody in there that will start opening these things back up. Because Mike has said several times, when I went to Detroit, when I went to Cincinnati, they were asking me to do the pregame warm-ups and the psych-ups and stuff like that. But when I was in Green Bay, they kept telling me to shut up. So, you know, it's something with the organization, because even when you look at Matt LaFleur, even though I didn't know who LaFleur was when they hired him, I was stoked about the hire, because when he was speaking at the microphone for his introductory press conference, he was given hype. I mean, he was like building it up. And then I went to training camp that first year, and he was scrapping with the other players, because that was the first year they started doing the joint practices. And the Texans came in, and Lonnie Johnson tried to take Jay Sternberger's head off, and LaFleur was in there in the middle of the scrum. But now you don't see that anymore.
Well, yes and no. I would say LaFleur is more cognizant of his public image than he was when he was first hired. But like, if you see his locker room videos, like, they only post them after wins.
Right.
He still has that fire. And so, and then when he yelled at Quay Walker last year, that was but like, I think LaFleur has it, but I do think that there is an organizational problem where they need to let the guys be assholes.
Yep.
And like, don't go out and get yourself fined for playing dirty, you know, because that's not what they need. That's not what any NFL team needs. But you need a defense that offenses are afraid to take on, because they don't know what's going to hit them. And when it gets to be 4th and 1, they're going to punt, because they know that someone is going to come up the middle and hurt them.
Yeah.
If they try.
Yeah.
Legally.
Basically, you want a defense of Quay Walkers without the shoving of personnel.
Right.
Yeah.
Basically.
Like I said, you have to reinvigorate yourself with the physical aspect of the game, because
well, and like, while we're on that, like Jair too. And see, this is the problem. Like, Jair, he talks it, and he's had like a down year and he's been hurt, but he was a Pro Bowler last year.
Yeah.
Like, he talks,
not just Pro Bowler, he was all pro last year.
Second team All Pro. And he talks his shit, and like, people are, I love it. And then he gets in front of the microphones this year, and even the fans are like, dude, that's weird. Don't do that.
Ask
And it's
Mike.
like,
I've been calling that shit out all
yeah,
year because
same.
I think it's
Yeah.
Because, like, first of all, it's Jair.
Yeah.
Like,
you got to know the guy.
like,
Yeah.
he is what he is. And I don't. Here's an interesting thing that I thought of. You brought up Dontavian Wicks's injury before and how he thought it was a high ankle sprain. I bet that cold weather and that plane ride is why Jair was not there. With that shoulder injury in the cold, the plane ride,
Yeah.
it could have swollen up and everything. And then I mean, I know he didn't play today, but like that cold weather in New York makes injuries seem a lot worse than they are.
Yeah. No.
Well, and the turf too. You know,
Yeah.
they still got that shitty ass turf that you land on it doesn't feel good.
Yeah, and like Joe was saying, I've said it. Like I have my personal thing. I was like, okay, John, like I get that you're the kind of guy you are, and you got to talk, to hype yourself up. You're one of those kind of guys. But I'm like, I need you to make the basic plays and stuff. But I don't. Yeah, I'm with you guys.
I know, but you
All
got
the
to know
talk about-
Jair outside the field.
Yeah,
This is the same
and
guy
yeah.
that does goat yoga in the off season.
Yeah.
And
Oh no, and I you got to do as an NFL athlete, you got to do whatever gets you in the right mindset. And my whole thing is, I'm like, can you just go make that play that probably isn't as easy as it looks, kind of thing and stuff. But all the questioning of does he care? Does he? I'm like, stop that.
it's
Like
ridiculous.
He's
the
lost.
moment Goot trades him, and he goes and has like a 5-year stretch of elite play for someone else. Goot's an idiot. Like, how could you trade?
Well,
how could you
yeah.
possibly
And to touch
trade
on
Jair?
something you said, Robin, about him not being there, I think one of the beat writers tweeted that was a false report that he was there.
Oh, I didn't see that. Well, that's cool.
I'd have to go back through and read through read through the.
I think I saw
but
that too.
I think it was
Yeah.
Paul Brettel or something that said, yeah, he's here. The reports weren't true, but he is here.
Well, that's good. But like,
Yeah.
beside the point, like, do these people not realize that like he gets bonuses for every game he plays?
Yeah.
Like, he's like missing this game today. I think it's close to $400,000
Yep.
that he's not been able to collect. Like, if he could be on the field, he would be.
Well, and that's the same with Bakhtiari. I know I kind of did this, was it a couple episodes where that Gary Ellerson came in and said he'd cut ties with both of them, trade them in the offseason. It's the same thing with Bakhtiari. Think about all the bonuses he's lost out on because of the games missed, the practices missed, the offseason workouts he's missed. It's not like he's, I just don't feel like it today.
Well, and that's the thing is like you need to understand like Jair's shoulder is never going to be the same. Like it's not. Like he wants to get like 100% healthy as it can be, but he's going to have shoulder issues for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
Bakhtiari is going to have knee issues for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
And like this isn't Rome and these aren't gladiators, like we actually like should care about life after football, which is one of the things that we've been talking with Gilbert about, and we brought in a nurse who specializes in like natural oils and stuff.
Yeah.
It's cannabis. And Gilbert has been taking this CBG from her. And he took it for a month. And on our show, he said for the first time since he retired, he could brush the back of his head.
Right.
And tie his shoes. Like, this is like real life stuff.
Yeah.
That these guys are dealing with. And to say like they don't care, like that's bullshit.
Yeah.
Just look at Larry McCarron sometime. Have Larry go like this for you one time.
When he points at all the counties in Wisconsin when he's putting his hands up to you. Yeah. Like I said like they should have Clay Matthews come and talk to all these guys when they sign their new contract, because just to have him tell you like you're everyone's favorite right now. Once you sign your name on that dotted line, the first time you roll your ankle in practice, you're a wuss, you're soft, you don't care anymore. Like we like and I just say we because it was it was the loudest parts of the fan base, but it's like what happened when we made the Packers made Clay Matthews the highest paid linebacker in the history of the NFL. Oh my god, look at that wuss. He won't play with a broken thumb that he broke twice in one season. His hamstring might be falling off the bone, but he needs to suck it up and be out there. And so it's the same thing with Jair and the people that are like he's weird and stuff. I'm like, show me a good, especially defensive football player who is elite and physical, like all the things you want in a football player, who doesn't have a few loose, like to.
I mean, like, even the Reggie White documentary, you watch it and you listen to some of the things he said, you're like, whoa, buddy.
This is the guy who's like the Christian of Christians.
Yeah.
Well, it's the same guy that said that God called me on the phone to tell me I was to go to Green Bay.
Yeah, and you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, they all have some.
Or I know this isn't a good name to be thrown around, but look at Brett friggin' Favre. He had more screw loose than a friggin' or what's the saying? Nuttier than a squirrel shit. It just fucking. Some of the things that you would see him or hear him say, it just.
Yeah. We could go on and on about this, but yeah.
Oh, I was going to say this. We could go.
Suffice it to say, this defense is not good enough, and the answer for 2024 cannot be roll it back with Joe Barry one more time. But I know we touched on special teams earlier, so I'll kind of just gloss over that because, like we said, the main point is that Anders had a good game again, bounced back after and that was the thing is like, so he's missed 5 field goals this season. None of them are inside of 40 yards. And I think they're all in kind of like wonky, like last week he was kicking knuckleballs to try and cut through whatever the wind was at MetLife Stadium. He
made one that was longer than the one he missed.
Right. Yeah. So like, this is a guy who struggled with accuracy. And as much as people are like, well, he missed the kick and they lost by 2. And I'm like, well, they didn't score.
Yeah, I saw that too. Like that was.
I was like, that's not how. That's not how any of these guys
picking. That's cherry picking who you want to blame.
Yeah. So
to answer something Robin said earlier about Bisaccia, if Bisaccia is kept, the reason is Anders.
Well, that's true. He is a kicker guru.
He has really done wonders with Anders Carlson right now.
Did wonders with his brother too.
Something you brought up earlier this year, Joe, is hopefully if those guys are all back in the special teams room, you'd like to think that Rich won't have to spend as much time with Anders next year because they'll have a steady, they'll have a higher floor that they're working off of next year. And so then maybe Rich has more hands in with the rest of the special teams and stuff like that. I think overall it's been an okay season. I think the expectation is like Rich is this guy who's just going to completely come in and change the Packers special teams overnight kind of thing. And no, he hasn't done that. The unit, by DVOA is still in the bottom third and stuff. But I think overall, you're not seeing the same amount of just blatant like brain fart moments kind of thing.
Right.
The Keyshawn moment notwithstanding last week. But it's like I think he has cleaned up a lot of the warts and issues that were there before he was there. And I do think that, like I said, the hope you have next year is that he won't be spending 80% of his time on Anders, getting him in, whether it's the right physical spot, the right mental mindset, and then it's more just like he's spot checking with all his guys and everything. He's just running around his whole special teams room again. But yeah.
Do you guys think Keyshawn's back next year?
If you read my article on Ohana Packers, I did say that I thought he would be somebody that was brought back. I don't think he's going to be the starting nickel. I do think
he shouldn't be.
I do think that he will be brought back mainly as a special. Now, this is all dependent on what he views himself as. If he decides to hit the market and try to be on a a starter on defense or whatever. But I think they could go in and say, all right, man, we want you as a returner. We want to put you in some of these gadget roles on offense because, that's what we see you as. But you're not going to start on defense. You're going to be a rotational guy if something happens. Like I said, it's all going to depend on what he thinks of himself at the end of the year and at the beginning of next year when free agency hits.
Yeah, I agree. It's kind of like what we say about the safety room, and you just can't go into next year with not many more better answers than what you have right now. That's the thing, is that I don't mind Keyshawn being brought back as a return guy primarily. And like I said, that's the way that, Gutekunst and LaFleur have to approach him about it in free agency. Is like, you're not going to start at nickel next year, but we do have plans for you to be the return man. Plus, we want to use you more on offense, kind of thing. And that's the way that I would go and approach it. So that's the way that I would like to see the team, because he does have value on this roster as a return man, and he can do some spot things on defense, but also could be a gadgety guy on offense and stuff. So I think
he's shown that he has the vision. I mean,
yeah.
He can see the holes opening up. He can see, where the openings are. So go the Devin Hester route. Don't just think of yourself as a defensive guy. Do some things on offense, do some things on special teams. But like I said, it all just depends on what he views himself as.
Yep. So, but that's going to do it for the team today. But Robin, since you're the guy who's there, I wanted to just ask you this question. Sorry, I don't have it on the notes, but it kind of popped into my head as we were talking. But I know you've gone to a couple games this season, right? So far?
Yes, 2.
Okay. Hey, that's still a couple. But from the first game you went to...
It's funny because my first game was 2004 ever.
Right.
And I took Ricky last year to a game, and I took him this year to 2. So Ricky has been to 2 games by the age of 6, and I did not get to my second game until I was 34.
But just in your opinion, how much different and better does Love look in terms of his control of the offense? Just how he looks commanding the huddle on the field and stuff. How does he look from the first game you went to now? How much better does he look in the facets of the game?
Well, the first game I went to was the Chargers game. So he looked pretty good that day.
Yeah.
Too. But I will say that last year, the game that we went to was played in very similar conditions as today. It was the Jets game.
Oh.
And
gotcha.
Love today looked 20 times better than Rodgers looked against the Jets last year in every way.
There we go.
Yeah. And I know that there's the caveat of, well, like, Love is young and Rodgers is old and all that kind of stuff, but those are the things that you want as a fan. There's a lot of things that are out of his control this season. He's growing up with the guys around him. There's the O-line isn't as good as we thought it was going to be. The run game isn't nearly what we thought it was going to be this season. Barry's defense is what we thought it was going to be, but that's unfortunate for different reasons.
It is what we all thought it was going to be, except Matt LaFleur. Everyone saw this coming.
But I just like hearing from, like you, Robin, and other people who are there, that it's like, no, like the things that you want your quarterback to do, obviously you want the successful end to opportunities and reps on the field, but just his overall operation within the offense, he just looks like he's becoming more and more in tune with everything, and everything's kind of running more by clockwork as he goes this season. So that's the kind of thing that I like to hear, that he's progressing in all facets of the game, and just it's not going to be the thing that makes him a great quarterback, but you like to hear that he's cool, calm, collected, in control, and not just kind of like running around like a chicken with his head cut off kind of thing and stuff. So no, I that is good to hear from your insight, like watching him play and stuff. So we usually go into who our MVP and LVPs of the day are. Robin, who is your MVP of the day today?
Ah, jeez, my son.
There you go.
Carrying me around. But if I had to pick an actual player, I would. Oh man,
I
I
know it's
guess
hard one.
I'd go with Jordan Love. Just because this is what the year's always been about.
Absolutely.
Is he the guy? And today he's the guy.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And
Joe,
I'm going
who
to
you
jump
got?
in front of Mike before he takes mine. I'm going to say Wicks, Dontavian Wicks. I mean, like we talked about earlier, you know, for all intents and purposes, we thought that ankle was shot because he said it himself after that game that his ankle is shit. And
No, he used a different 4-letter word, but yeah.
But for him to come out and play like nothing was wrong and almost go for his first 100-yard game, you know, he really put it all out there. And, you know, we've said it throughout the whole episode. The offense is not the reason why we lost. And the offense, and, you know, a big chunk of that is Dontavian Wicks.
And I'll stick on the offense. I'll go with Tucker Kraft. You know, going from a guy who, like, people were like, does this guy just suck at football earlier in the season, to a guy who has very capably filled into the shoes left by Luke Musgrave's
and
trip
more
to IR.
importantly, Mike, the guy who broke the 3rd-round curse.
Yes. He has put that behind him. So no, absolutely. I'm just really happy for Tucker. You know, Joe and I preached it the whole offseason and stuff, that, you know, the thing that we had heard out of preseason is Musgrave was going to be part of the offense no matter what he did, no matter how bad he blocked, no matter how many passes he dropped, no matter how many good plays he had. LaFleur, Love, they all kind of said it coming out of training camp that, like, no matter what, this guy is going to be a cornerstone of our offense. And Tucker, he's going to learn to block this season. So, and Tucker struggled with it early in the season, and it was understandable, you know, making the jump not only from college to the pros, but from FCS to the NFL. But I really like the progress he's made this year, and I'm really glad that, you know, obviously I wish Musgrave wasn't hurt, but I'm glad that Kraft is getting recognized for his efforts, and he's getting some, you know, quote unquote counting stats that matter to kind of validate the season that he's having, not just like, you know, people like Dusty and Ross and Andy clipping tape of like, oh, that's a really good block by Tucker Kraft, and he eliminated his man here, he combo blocked really well here. I'm glad that he has some counting stats that'll kind of say like, well, he's got 2 touchdowns now, and he's turned himself into a really good blocking tight end for this offense. So
and
really...
Kraft said it himself the other day at the locker rooms, you know, now I'm
like
actually
violence.
yeah, there's that one too. But he's actually he's able to show what got him in the NFL was the yak, the yards after catch. I mean, and that's what Mike and I were preaching early in the season. Give it to the guy and let him go.
He jumped over another dude today.
Yeah.
And that guy was not like crouched over trying to make the tackle. That guy was standing upright.
I think he thought he was crouching over to make the tackle, and that's why he got nutmegged on the play. But we're glad that he went back in the
special place on that one.
We saw a lot of snarky Kraft questionable lower body injury from a lot of people, and I'm not even going to ask you guys who your LVP is. We all know who it is today. It's Joe freaking Barry.
Yeah.
No need to expunge any further on that topic. But Robin, it's been love having you on. It's been awesome. We're definitely going to have you back. Anything else? Take the time now. Kind of went into it earlier. Robin is one of the co-hosts of the Go Dads Go podcast. Robin, we give you a few minutes here. Just plug whatever you got and whatever you want to at this point.
Sure. I got the Go Dads Go with Gilbert Brown podcast that I do with Brian Maffey. We record every Monday. It's a real good time. You can hear Gilbert react, and he's almost funnier after losses than he is after wins.
I will very much say yes, it is.
But you can, I do writing. You can see my writing work over at Wisconsin Sports Heroics, and And then I also have Gridiron Heroics over there. I don't do so much writing over there. I do the editing though, with the help of my wife. So, but that's what I got going on. Covering Packers, of course. Now, after I'm done with this, I gotta go watch the Bucks game because we gotta cover that. Everything Wisconsin sports is. You can find it right there.
Awesome stuff. Like I said, we thank you for coming on with us. Wish it was a better outcome, but hey, at least the Bucks look like they're salvaging the day. They're up 71-60 at halftime on the Houston Rockets. Joe, anything else from you this week?
No, I really, I don't. There's nothing more because I'm ready to be done with this fantastic game, and I guess we move forward to the next one.
Yep. Let's see how good
the worst team in the NFL.
Yeah.
Let's watch Joe Barry make Bryce Young look like a Heisman candidate again.
Well, what was the stat that they said today? That I think it was Westendorf said that Young hasn't thrown a touchdown in like a month.
In a month. Yeah. It's been a month since Bryce Young has thrown a touchdown. So.
And like I quote tweeted it, here comes a 4 touchdown, 0 interception day for Bryce Young. But
hey, as long as Jordan Love puts up 280 to 300, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, I'm okay.
Yep.
Love just needs to prove that he's the guy, and Barry needs to continue to show LaFleur that he's ass.
Yep.
And maybe we want the Panthers to win so the Bears don't get as good of draft pick out of it.
I think they're.
You know what, though,
no
Joe?
What, but yeah,
the Bears will always fuck up their draft picks.
Yeah, I know. They're going to take both Caleb Williams and
Drake May.
So. They're going to double down on it, man.
That would be the funniest thing. They're going to try to do like the reverse draft day. They're going to take Drake May first, and then Caleb Williams is going to fall to their second pick because everyone's like, oh my God, what do they know? Oh, okay. We've hit the zany part of the day, so we're gonna put a bow on this one. Like I said, this is the Ohana Packers Edition podcast. We want to thank our guest Robin Adams. You can find him on Twitter at theotherrobin19. Please check him, Brian Mafia, and Gilbert Brown out on the Go Dads Go podcast. Like Robin said, if you're a fan of the Packers and other Wisconsin sports teams, Wisconsin Sport Heroics and Gridiron Heroics are also his productions. So please give him your support on those. You can find me on Twitter at Kawano Mike. Joe is at Iowa_Joe86. Please find the pod at Ohana_Packers. Please visit our website, ohanapackers.org. You can find the streams of all of our episodes on there, in addition to our blog posts. Follow the podcast on your favorite apps. Please give us a subscribe and a like if you're enjoying what you're hearing. Please do feel to give any sort of commentary feedback to us, as we do take that all to heart. The Packers, well, the main thing, like Robin and Joe and I have said, Jordan Love is still ascending, and Joe Barry is proving that he is the guy we all thought he was. Next week, the Packers take on the Carolina Panthers. Join us again on Thursday for our opponent preview, and we want to just say, go Pack, go, and aloha.